What are you doing in town?
So originally, the reason why I was coming to Austin was because of Tim Kennedy's Sheepdog Response.
Oh, really?
So doing that this weekend with my brother, with my cousin, and another friend, and then with the baby coming soon, I'm trying to just stack as much on as possible. So a few days early, just to podcast and of course see some friends. But Sheepdog is the big thing that I'm excited for here.
Nice. So you, all right, so you got a baby coming in 2 months.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
I heard you had Nathan Riley on your show. I interviewed him recently.
Oh
as
shoot!
well.
Okay.
Yeah. So he told me you were prepping, and which I already knew that, but prepping in another way. So you're stacking all your work so you can have space when the baby comes.
That's the idea. I definitely realize that I'm pushing a pace that's not sustainable. Like I fully recognize that, and this is also why I've developed the rituals and the routines and why I take care of myself. But that being said, the pace that I'm running at right now has been quite fast, and in fact, so much so that a big lesson for me recently is like it's beautiful to push and to want to create space. Like I understand why I'm doing it and I want to be present. And also parts of me feel like I'm missing out of this time too.
Right.
So it's finding that, I don't know if there is balance, but I also know that right now is a time to push, but also check in with Lauren and check in with, my time being home with her and connecting with her and connecting with the baby. So it's been a whirlwind, man, to be honest.
Yeah, there's a frame I've used where a lot of times people talk about balance. Like, oh, I want to find balance. I was like, well, good luck. Life doesn't really like this. This is a moving thing, right? Like every moment is changing, and it becomes more obvious when you add more time. But in time, I basically changed from saying balance to harmony. Because like you don't balance on a bicycle. A lot of times people think about, oh, I'm going to balance on a bike. It's like, no, not really. You're going from left to right, and if you're going to make a turn, you're going to lean really hard into one direction or another. You're not just trying to balance. You're not standing still in a spot and trying not to fall over. So with that comes from you're probably just in a really hard left turn right now.
It's so
it might last a while.
Speaking of biking, I was with Mike Ruscio last night and hanging out with him, and he took me on a bike ride. And I think it was, and he even said, I think it was partially payback from when he trained with me years ago, and he felt like a fish out of water and how tough it was on him. Took me on this bike ride, an hour-long bike ride, and this dude's been training and like doing all the optimization stuff. I'm like, bro, I have not trained much at all lately. I am deconditioned. And speaking as we sit, my ass is sore right now. So
you were cycling? Was it like cycling. Road biking?
Yeah, it was road biking, and just like, and he was mashing it. So talk about like, and I haven't ridden a bike in years. So that I feel like my left and right sit bones are just bruised like a motherfucker because of those hard lefts and hard rights right now.
Yeah. So you're what inspired you to do Sheepdog? Or tell everybody what Sheepdog Response is.
So Sheepdog, I do know that they've got all different types of education, long range shooting, and this one is going to be the Protector Level 1. So from my understanding, it'll be a lot of handgun safety and protocols and stuff like that, but also a lot of Protector grappling work. And so that is something that, one, I've always wanted to learn, but the news and the excitement around having a baby really changes certain things. Like it has prioritized certain things in my life, and really, like, I've always wanted to protect our family. Like that was a big thing for me, and protecting Lauren, and now she's got a baby inside her. So I'm like freaking just my head's on more of a swivel. And I'm also way more situationally aware and realizing more than ever at how weak and unconditioned and undeveloped my situational awareness is. And, if something were to go down, I'm an athletic guy, I'm a fit guy, I've done a little bit of grappling, but I don't feel honestly in this moment confident Like if something were to go down in a mall or something was to go down in a parking lot, what would be my protocol? What would be the steps that I would consider to go through? Because I've never had that training and I've never been put in that situation. So with this, the fact that, the baby's coming, my brother just had his second baby like 2 or 3 months ago. So this is also a time not only to learn the developmental skills on how I want to show up and protect our family, but also to go through this with my brother and with my cousin and have that bonding experience together. Like there's so many reasons why I wanted to do it. And then the fact that it's happening in 2 months, the baby's coming, I'm like, well, if it's not now, then it might be a long time
Yeah.
before it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something that, I don't have a baby on the way, but there's something that happens when Ashley and I started about talking about having kids, and then we traveled internationally and got in some weird situations. And I realized like I've traveled international my whole life with very little concern. I mean, I trained to fight for a long time and with guns and everything else, but uh, it changed. Even if you do know what you're doing, it shifted. I go, oh, because running away is always an option until you're with somebody who can't run away or is going to be slower than you that you care about. So you have to, like, what I've witnessed myself, changed in myself in the last couple of years, and again, this isn't even with kids, but I can't, like, the evading is not part of the plan anymore. Like that was like definitely part of the plan. Like I'm in a weird country, something's going on. I'm pretty fucking fast. I can push somebody down. I can just move. Not going to happen anymore. So you got to learn how to stand your ground, and standing your ground is just it's a totally different way of thinking. Especially, I think with guys like us who are really athletic. It's like, yeah, I could probably figure it out, But now, like, now you got to figure it out in this container. Like you can't leave. And I feel that. That's but also once you have the training, you'll feel so good. You'll feel so good. You'll feel like really safe. So I like when I go out now, I feel like if somebody wanted to fuck with us, they'd be making a mistake. And that's a really good feeling to have.
I totally agree with that. And even just like the course hasn't even started, but even just in the last few months, my just awareness of my surroundings has gone up tremendously. And like, for example, being at a restaurant, just where I choose to sit, never once did I consider being able to look at the door and being able to see, everyone in the room and potentially spot something that could be happening, whether I feel confident defending myself or not or protecting my family. Just the fact that I can be aware minutes before something or seconds before something to happen. Every time someone walks in the door, I'm looking at, are they wasted? Are they,
right?
Do they have a mean look on their face? Whatever it is. And then once I establish just a level of comfort or a level of just like, okay, I know my environment and where I'm at right now, then actually I just notice an internal relaxation happening. Like, okay, I can turn off a little bit because now I've taken 5 seconds to just survey my environment and take care of my family in that perspective.
Yeah. I was training with this Navy SEAL last year. He was a Master Chief. He'd done like countless deployments, and definitely one of those dudes that ran through some doors and just slaughtered people. And you can tell when you talk to him, you're like, oh, this guy is fucking, like, he's seen a lot of shit. I mean, I know quite a few SEALs, but like when you hit the guys that have like been in 20 years and done 8 deployments, 9, 10 deployments, you're like, yeah, you're a different kind of fucking human. And he gave us a piece of advice that sounded so fucking dark, but I was like, I never did exactly what I never heard it before, and I never really took that on. Like, situational awareness is one thing, but he says that every time, like everywhere he is, all the time, he has a plan to kill every person in the room.
Oh my God, dude.
And I was like, man, that's fucking dark and morbid. Like, I mean, so the
Jesus, dude.
So I started doing it, and at first I was like, it's actually not as crazy as I thought it was going to be. I was like, oh man, I don't know how is that going to impact my consciousness if
Yeah.
I'm like consciously. I was like, okay, like people who don't even look like a threat. Like I was like, okay, like where am I going to shoot them? Like, all right, third button down on their shirt. That's what I'm aiming for. Like, because you want to aim for like the smallest thing possible because you're more likely to hit your target. And remember The Patriot, Mel
Oh
Gibson?
yeah.
Aim
Great
small. Was
movie.
it aim small, miss small, or
Small.
something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. So the
Amazing movie.
it really, I saw bits and pieces of it a while back. Recently, it was good. Um, the yeah, so the idea, and so I started being out in public, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna give this shit a try. And I was worried that it was gonna, fuck me up. I'm like, no, I want to love everybody. But I think you can, like, what I found is you can do both. I can love everybody and have a plan to kill everybody. Like, it's like, oh yeah, just and I think that like shift actually shifts the energy too. Like I think there's it's like I'm gonna love you, and if you cross this line, I'll fucking destroy you. And there's something about that where every single time anyone walks into any room, no matter how enlightened you are, there's a pecking order. There's a hierarchy. There's a whatever. And there's different types of hierarchies. Like if I walk into a room with somebody who's a mentor and they're really good at business, like I'm the mentee, they're the mentor. But if I'm in a room with guys that don't have as much training, like the pecking order of being able to conduct violence is, I was like, oh, okay, I know where I'm at. And energetically, because I have a plan to kill everybody, like it elevates me in that way. Now, I'm not sitting there thinking about that the whole time. Like, it's not like, so I just kind of do it, walk in the room, do the checkup. All right, that's okay, that's the plan. And it's just, it's just a practice, it's a good practice. So that's all I'm going to say about that. If I get any deeper into that conversation, people think I'm a fucking psycho.
Well, one thing that comes up on the hierarchy thing, like in entering a room, like I do feel that a big part of that serves a very functional purpose. Like when you walk into, like if shit were to go down, you would be the guy that has a series of checklists that automatically runs through his head. And people, whether they're conscious of it or not, they would be looking around or it would just be a shit show. And
They'd
you
be
would
looking for you or someone like you.
someone like you, whether it was you calling the shots to bring everyone to safety or whatever, or just to feel some level of safety because they're losing their shit. So part of it, like not even an ego perspective, like part of it absolutely serves a tremendous purpose. And this is why like you have alphas in a pack. Like there is leaders and then there are people that follow the leaders.
Yeah.
Right. So there is an absolute functional reason for that, well beyond just trying to puff our chests up in a room. It's like, no, like there's a sense of safety that's created among the entirety of the room just from you being you and you going through that checklist and energetically showing up in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's different skills out there that are built up over time. Obviously, some people start ahead of others, but like, some people do really well in chaos. Like a lot of times I won't wake up in calm, peaceful situations. I can be very complacent. It's not like where I feel the most energized. Enter in a little bit of chaos and I thrive. And I think, and that's a skill to develop. And so like, you're going to be doing that this weekend. You're going to be put in chaotic experiences and you're going to have to learn how to do that. But I read a study a while back. It was, they were looking at people who were excelled at startups, right? Like tech startups in Silicon Valley. It's like who excels, and they found that people that come from large families tend to excel at startups, and not for the reason most people would think, but it's because they grew up in a more chaotic environment. So, like the more children there were, the more chaos existed, and so you've developed the skill of dealing with chaotic environment way more than somebody who grew up with like, in a small family where everything was pretty chill. And so that person's probably not going to be drawn to a chaotic environment. They're going to be drawn to an environment that's much more, much more chill. My computer keeps on trying to switch audio, but we're good.
Well, with that too, like one of the things, and bringing it back to the baby coming, so I would love to have 2 babies, and we'll see what Lauren says after. But in this moment, she's very happy with one, and she's in the thick of the pregnancy, right? But we've talked about many times, like what I really, I mean, I had a brother, and there's nothing wrong with being an only child, but in the same light, like, man, you learn to self-regulate, to solve problems. You learn to develop, like you were saying, in chaos, but you learn your boundaries. You get checked. Like what we learn in relationship, especially as we're kids. So much of the learning lessons doesn't necessarily oftentimes have to come from the parents. And when you can learn to learn with people around your age, I think it really develops a more functional capability and capacity that you can apply to business, that you can apply to intimate relationships down the road, that you can apply to being a leader or whatever it is that you want to do. And that's why one of the reasons why I'm pushing for kid number 2. And she's like, let's just get this one out and then we'll see. But I'm like, no, we got to do it for service for the kid. We need a second one. He's a brother. And she's like, a brother? 2 boys? I was like, of course, a brother. But if it's a girl, we'll love her all the same.
You're just terrified of having a girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about, I keep saying 3.
Okay.
She keeps saying 2. I'm like 3. She's like 2. She's like 136. I was like, so we're pulling for twins. That's what she wants. I think that's the only way we're getting 3. But I think she just wants it out of the way.
Well, dude, it's such an interesting thing. So, like, we had our a lady who once in a while cleans our house, and she was talking with Lauren. I forget if it's either she or her mom, is one of fucking 16 kids. I thought she was going to say 16 fucking kids. That is basically the majority of her whole adult life, one baby after another. And so I was telling Lauren, I was like, she can do 16. You can do 2. It's all relative. Once you have that threshold, it's like the 4-minute mile, bro. You do the 4-minute mile. Now everything's more possible. You have 16 kids over here. 2's 3? Why not 3?
Why not? So easy.
Yeah. I'll check it with me in a year when
Easy
my bank account
say,
is like fucking taken. And I got all these goddamn ornaments on the tree that cost so much.
Oh yeah, we were talking before the show, like how both Mike and I, like our homes are just so simple and minimalistic and basic. I mean, when I was living in California, I used to have people would come in. They're like, "Oh, when'd you move in?" I'm like, 2 years ago. They're like, "Huh?" Then they're like, realize it was like, "Oh, did I offend him?" I'm like, "Dude, I just don't. This is it. This is how I live."
It's actually a compliment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're doing Protector 1. That's a 2-day deal.
Yeah, like 2.5 day or something like that.
Yeah, you check in tonight or Friday night.
Yeah,
Ashley did it. Ashley did the Protector 1 for women.
Was it only a women's course?
Yep.
Or was it okay.
Yeah, they did it. I think a couple times a year they do a women's only course.
Okay.
And yeah, she'd never grappled before, and they just beat her up. The other thing is, I have a high performance pistol for those types of situations, which is not a Glock. So a Glock can get pretty dirty, and I mean the best part of a Glock is its durability. Like it can, I won't say you can drop sand in there and shoot it, but like it can get really, really dirty. And it's going to keep operating. Super dependable. What I got is a little less dependable. I also have a Glock, but the one that I have for that type of situation, like it's like the Porsche of pistols. So like a Porsche, it's probably gonna be in the shop more than a Toyota Tacoma, and it's because like the Glock is the Toyota Tacoma, and I have a CZ Shadow is like a Porsche, and it's going to go faster. It's going to take the turns better. It's going to feel good. It's going to be precise and all that. But if it gets too dirty, you're fucked. So I tried to explain it to her, but when you're dropping a bunch of new stuff on somebody who's never shot guns and stuff much before, a lot of it's just like not all of it's absorbing. So she goes in and spends the first day shooting, and the second day the gun starts jamming on her. She like calls me up. She's like, "What the fuck?" Like the instructors when I first got here was like, "You got the best gun on the range." I was like, "Yeah."
Oh shit.
Like there's a bunch of women going to the thing, and I'm like, "By the way, that pistol, you're taking my pistol, and like they're gonna love it. Just so you know, like you're gonna have the best pistol out there." She's like, "Okay, whatever." And she got out there, and then the instructors were like, "Oh, can I touch it?" And well, the instructor says like, "If he ever wants to sell it, hit me up." But yeah, day 2 it started locking up on her. I was like, it doesn't make any sense. That gun is like super, it's a fucking great pistol. All you gotta do is, clean it after you shoot. It's good. And she was like, well, I didn't clean it last night. I was so tired. I was like, you gotta clean it after every time you shoot. So she was like, well, so-and-so had a SIG and so-and-so had a Glock. I was like, yeah, but those guns are made like to just be durable. They're not as precise. They're not as clean. They don't feel as good in your hand when you shoot, all this stuff, but they will keep working. But even with those guns, it's a good habit just to clean them after every time you shoot, like every time. So anyways, gun lesson number, I don't think I've ever talked about guns on the show. So.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool she had that experience because my brother's wife and then one of my longtime clients did the all women's one too. And I'm curious because I don't know if Ashley's met Kat, but I'm curious if I don't know how often they run these women's one, but it was like within the last year or so.
It was here in Austin.
Yeah, they flew in for that.
Oh yeah, if it was a few months ago, they might have been a few. I think it was like 6 months ago.
Something like that.
Yeah, it was this past
Holy
summer.
shit.
Yeah, they were probably because I remember it was hot.
They were probably rolling with each other, dude.
Probably beating each other up. Well, and it was really good for Ashley to go. For one, she had never done any combatives at all. So whether it be hand to hand or, not trained combatives. I think she's been in a couple fights, but trained combatives, hand to hand or pistols. Like she shot some other people's guns before. But before she went, she doesn't listen to this show, so I'll be okay. Before she went, she was like, I experienced her as too confidence outside of her actual ability. She's like, oh, I could take that girl, or that guy comes after me, I got it. And I'm like, I don't think you do. I don't like. She had this is like a. I think most people live in a fantasy that they're going to be better off than they would in that situation.
Yeah.
And, I think she grew up in a neighborhood where there was some brawling going on. She won some fights when she was in her, teens, early 20s. So when you're also fighting other people who are untrained and whatever, you might get lucky.
You're relying on crazy.
You're relying on crazy. That's it. And so she goes, and there's like a humility that came back. Everything was bruised up. It was painful. There were some pro MMA fighter women in there that were running things, and she didn't realize, she came back and she realized the gap, and she wasn't really interested in doing any more. She's like, I was like, you want to go like to the next level, And she goes, no, I don't know if I'll ever do that again. So, but at least in that case, because now the conversation between her and I, when we're doing things, I'm like, all right, I know I've trained enough to where I know what the level of my capabilities, right? But I don't, I recognize you don't, and you might actually like put us in a situation because you don't realize what kind of position you're going to put me in. And so what I noticed is after that training, like there was like a more of a, I guess the word would be like subservience to me in a way, like, or submission to me in certain situations. She was like, okay, I recognize how bad it can get, and like how, someone wants to manhandle me. I think she rolled with Tim Kennedy too. Like he jumped on the mat and just
demolished him.
Yeah.
Slammed her head in the mat, probably.
That dude's probably like 220, and he's a beast. So I think that was a benefit for the ladies going, is like, it's like, yeah, if something goes down, you realize how difficult it is to grapple. You realize how difficult it is. Like if something goes down and I'm grabbing my gun, you probably aren't going to join me in the gunfight. Like you should probably enough about what's happening where it's like, yeah, you should probably just go hide instead. Like you may not be helpful, right? And especially if she sees how good I am. Oh, okay. Like he whips that thing out and just starts firing and like hits the target every time. Okay, that's not me. I'm fiddling around. I'm having a hard time get to it. So I think going to these trainings is more. It's good to know about. It's good to prepare, but it's also just good to know where you stand,
right?
In the grand scheme of things, because you don't realize how good other people are. So just like anything, you dive into it. It's like when I was doing CrossFit, I was like, oh, this rowing thing. You just pull on the handle, right? And then I had like a professional rower come in. I was like, oh, okay. This is as complex as, a snatch at this point.
Absolutely. And like even to the point with Ashley and what I've experienced with Lauren, like this has been a theme for probably over a year. And I think was a big factor in me even asking her to marry me was this continual reminder, voice, message, whatever you want to call it, that a big part of what I want to do is energize team more and be a team.
Mm-hmm.
And not long after, I proposed to her. And then very soon after that, we found out she was pregnant. I was like, well, I got exactly what I asked for. But, from the protection side of stuff, it's like, I think you're exactly right. Like it lets you know, it gives her a realistic experience of where she's actually at, especially when you can see yourself in relation to others. But now you guys are way more suited to be a team in a situation. And it's like, it's, I don't even know what the saying is, but like 1 + 1 isn't 2. It's like 1 + 1 becomes 3.
Yeah.
Because now there's the synergy that's created in the teamwork, and whether it's someone coming in the house or just simply knowing, what's an exit plan or how to use a gun, like all of those things that were, you and I have had conversations about even finances and stuff. And you recommended that Wise Money course. It's like that course has brought so much more team environment even into the home to where now we can open up conversations that we maybe never would have before because we've actually both started something and can speak more of the same language. And even on the topic of finances, like I don't remember the exact, you would probably know better than me, but like, I don't know, 70% or some shit like that of marriages fail as a result of financial, turmoil.
Yeah, 70% of, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but yeah,
It's
there's a
high.
percentage of like, of the ones that fail.
Yes.
Finances are a key factor in the whole thing.
So knowing just that, wouldn't it be just wise or mindful to start having those conversations before shit hits the fan? And just like we're talking about on the protector side of things, like it just makes mindful sense and logical sense that, some of these conversations or some of these situations, it would be wise if it was presented earlier in a controlled manner before shit hits the fan, because if shit hits the fan, then it's fucking a melee.
Yeah, I think one of the components to this conversation is having a third party come in. So like you're not going to go home and train her probably.
No,
that wouldn't work.
That wouldn't work very well. I was like, I could visualize
that wouldn't make. Well, I think as far as like becoming a really good team, it's good to have an outsider come in to teach both of you, because we have these frames that we come to a relationship with, and they're not the same frame. We have different mental structures, different like lifestyle structures, and then you're trying to merge these two things, and people don't want to give up their structure and just completely adopt the other person's structure. So one of the things that I found, because Ashley and I did the financial course together too.
Oh wow!
Is we basically just get to adopt someone else's structure. You don't have to adopt mine. I'm not adopting yours. We as a team are leaving behind the way we behaved with this thing before, and now we're gonna together do that. So I like bringing a third party to help create a better team.
Yeah, that makes total sense, man. That makes total sense, and I think, yeah, especially when it's guided by someone that you respect and who's lived. It's not just like whether it's the Wise Money course or these guys like Tim Kennedy. Like you're around some straight up killers.
Yeah.
Like it's not just like you're taking a protective course with someone who I don't even know, like worked at a range or something like these
right.
dudes have
There's a lot of NRA instructors who've never seen action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're learning from people who have seen some shit, and the examples that they use or whatever it is, it's like, oh my God, like I didn't even know that would, that wasn't even in my reality outside of a movie, and this dude lived it or whatever. And so to hear the examples, and more than anything, I think like feel the tone of their voice, feel the energy in which they teach with, like the conviction, like what is commonplace for them, the conversations among boys and amongst friends, for me would be so different. Like I'm just not used to having those conversations. And so to jump in, it would be like someone, using the gym analogy, it'd be like someone who's never touched a weight in their life, like just coming to hang out and being a fly on the wall, for example, and maybe a conversation with me and you, or me, you and someone else. They'd be like, what? But there's just this confidence or this flow with it. And so I'm excited to be in that environment, to actually just witness them interacting and how they teach and how they express and the analogies or the stories. Because I've had it now a good handful of friends that have gone through it, and they've all said the same thing, that in a similar way that you're saying. They're like, you realize really quickly that there's levels to this, and what you normally would be like, oh, that is a very extreme example. It's like they're tossing that out like it's candy, because that's been their reality for so long. And in that perspective, it is humbling. Like you automatically get to see that there is a gap, and that might be uncomfortable, and that also I think is really healthy for our growth and development. That's why in every whether you're trying to be better in business or trying to be better in the gym, it's like truly surround yourself with people that are better than you, and just see the net gain over, maybe not immediately, but the net gain over time, whether it's in the actual hard skills or just the software and the confidence and the thought process that goes. And then once you develop that, just witness and experience like all the other correlations and how that transfers into so many other areas of life that we may not even have remotely have thought was connected.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell people regularly that podcasting has been one of the greatest personal development tools that I've had, because when I was running Shrugged, we were in the business of traveling to guests on their, in their territory, their property, their gym, their whatever. We go in their environment, and we're basically seeking out the best at what. Oh, you're the best at this. It's like, oh, you're the best power lifter. We go to see Louis Simmons at Westside Barbell. It's like we go and train with them. We podcast with them. And what occurred to me a few years into that process of and we were doing a show a week. So we were hanging out with one of the best in the world all the fucking time.
Wow.
And, it wasn't shortly after that I go, oh, all these different methods. I see all the principles now that underlie the methods. Okay, I could even create my own method now that I know these principles. This is great. But then really starting to see the value in just being around people. Like, how are they being? That's something that I don't think you can cognitively really digest. It's more energetic, and there's something about being in the room with people that are of a certain, pedigree that's like, oh shit. Okay, I took on 1% of that energy today. That was cool. Yeah. So you've been jumping into men's work more. So a lot of people they think Mike Salemi, and they're like, kettlebells. But yeah, can you fill us in a little bit more on I'm curious too for you to share what that transition's been like to go from fitness to much more like the men's work.
I think it's interesting because like the word men's work, like this has just been my own work on myself for so long. So like whether in the public whatever space I'm posting shit on Instagram or what, like this has been such a big part of my own development as an athlete, as a person for, I think back to 2000 maybe and 13, so over 10 years now is when I really started getting into a lot more self-development work. I'd been doing it before, but all that to be said, like this has always been something that has really energized me, really excited me. My own life, and then even just the people closest to me have always been like just a testing ground for creating some of these smaller containers. But really, it wasn't until just a few years ago that I really just did an honest reflection and just started seeing, I love fitness, movement in general will always be a part. Like I love teaching. In the realm of teaching that I think also applies to the men's work is one theme that I really do love is bringing in, I don't want to say like newcomers, or let's use the example for fitness, like being able to be someone's like first entrance or first experience into something that maybe intimidated them or something that they felt out of their comfort zone, like trying a kettlebell for the first time. Or I get that a lot with Bulgarian bags. Like, oh, dude, that looks insane what you've done on there, like with the soupless ball. Or I've watched Coach Ivan do it. And I'm like, no, it's okay. Like, we'll break it down. You're okay. And so what I didn't really realize is the container that I've always strived to create in fitness was one of safety and one where everyone's welcome. And we can break down the most complex shit. And, maybe by the end of the day, you're not going to be doing, what you see me doing on Instagram, but I'll walk you through. I'll walk you through a process. And even in fitness, like, it brought me so much joy to see the ahas and to see like people doing things that they didn't think they could do. And fitness, or the kettlebell, the Bulgarian bag, whatever the fuck, is just the tool. But it was really, what I realized is the actual growth aspect around what they were experiencing and the confidence, and then going back home and sharing it. And then I started realizing, like, man, I really want to do so much more than movement, because how I care for myself is way more than what I do in the gym. How I eat, or the meditation practice, or my spiritual connection, or whatever it is. And so it was a big step, though, for me, because I was stepping out of the identity of the fitness expert or the fitness teacher. And it took me, a long time, or a few years, to actually give it a shot. And actually, one of Chris's retreats, our buddy Chris Marhefka, I remember at the end of the retreat, we were doing something like declarations or making a commitment to something. And I still remember at that retreat, one of the things I said is, I want to start leading my own men's work. And when you say it in front of all of those people, or when you declare it out loud, it was like, oh shit, there's nowhere to hide. Because that's been inside of me for a long time. And now I just got witnessed by, I don't know, 17, 20 guys. What are you going to do about it now? And so it marinated over and over. And I was like, what are you so scared of? What are you so scared of? Or why not? Why not you? Why not? You want to do this thing? Why don't you just test it out? And so what I've really seen as I set up that first retreat, man, I was so nervous. I was so nervous, and like, it's so funny. I was actually surprised and not surprised how nervous I was, being just
and everybody who was attending was nervous.
And everyone was
I'm
sure.
sure.
Yeah. And, I just called up some of our, close friends that we mutually both know for some help on the facilitation role. And for me, one of the big things was, like, I like to plan, and I like to do all my due diligence and cross all the I's and cross all the T's. And what I really realized is that works. That was more giving me a sense of comfort and a sense of safety.
Right.
But the real work has been, and each retreat, we've now done 3 every 6 months or so. It's been actually, can I actually just like still have some structure, so we have some semblance of a plan, but at the same time, the biggest work for me, and I didn't learn this until my later years in teaching movement, is like trusting my own abilities. I'm always going to be learning. I'm always going to be practicing new shit, but really just focusing on the container itself, setting that so it's solid, and then trusting my intuition and feeling where the guys are at. Because even in fitness, like, I could tell you every fucking progression of a kettlebell movement, or with the Bulgarian bag movement. Like, that stuff's hardwired into me through the reps. And now the practice is, when I teach, is actually just to like surrender to like, who's in front of me, where are they at? Is this a psychological thing that I need to build them up a little bit, or what's really holding them back? And so that's been a little bit of the journey, but it's been softening to still having a plan and to structure, but especially within the activities, just softening to what wants to happen. And the last thing I'll say on that real quick is the biggest challenge with that has been, and I learned this early on, is, so Lauren does all the cooking for the retreat, like, and she's fucking phenomenal at what she does, and she knows that I hate schedules. Like, I just, like, especially if I'm in a situation where someone's opening up or whatever, there's no way I'm rushing that person's process.
Yeah.
However, when you're cooking for 20 guys and the mealtime was supposed to be at 12, and you finish breath work 2.5 hours later, and she knows she's not going to interrupt the session.
Yeah, she knows.
It's
still frustrating.
Oh, I bet it's so much. So that was some of the challenge we had early on, and we've since worked that out.
How did you work that out?
It wasn't more us working it out as opposed to me working it out. because she didn't have anything
Right
to do.
answer.
But she just really had to explain. She's worked in restaurants and luxury hospitality like her whole life.
Yeah.
So she knew, like, I don't even remember the words, but she would use words that are like the fire time or whatever, like fire up a meal, like when the burners turn on, like the clock starts. And she was walking me through the whole thought process of actually, like, I've cooked, but I've never cooked for this many people on a schedule, and especially like after a sweat lodge, like people are fucking depleted and they've been fasting before, for example. Like, and she's so thoughtful in her approach to things. She had to walk me through exactly what needed to happen. And actually, on the first retreat, man, it was so crazy. These guys go through over 100 pounds of meat in 4 days. Like, these dudes are eating, and not everything is meals. Like, there's a bunch of fasting too, but the meat didn't arrive until like I believe it was right before the retreat started. So she had to drive 6 hours. I couldn't help her put 100 pounds of meat in the car and everything that she needed to pack. So she got to the retreat location on the first one and literally was showing up. We were doing our first workout as she was unloading the truck, let alone putting everything into the kitchen and into the freezers. So she started way behind the clock. And then you have me, who's an hour to 3 hours late on every activity because I'm dropping in with people and not wanting to rush. And I just remember how frustrated she was. And I was like, oh shit, I really don't know. Like, I can know certain things, but that's an area that I just don't know. And so I've humbled myself to that. And I'm proud to say, like, we are pretty dialed now, having run it 3 times.
Nice. There's something I noticed that a lot in partnership is sometimes someone has a complaint. Like Ashley will go, but when she walks me through her process of how she's thinking about it or how she's approaching it, then it's way easier for me to have compassion. Because I think there's a part of us that just, until we know what it is, it's hard to be compassionate to that, where it's like, okay. Or, I've learned, instead of just saying, hey, don't do that, or do this, do it like this, I go, okay, this is, you know how I do it? This is why I do it the way I do it. It's like, oh, okay. But
I think that's so spot on, because one thing that's helped us is, we are oftentimes so on the same page, me and Lauren, that when we're not, it's actually like it feels like a massive thing, and it feels just,
oh yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Armageddon,
yeah. And I'm just like, well, we don't use but we definitely get into it sometimes and have our, we do our best to fight fair, and I think that's an important aspect in relationship. And what I will say, one of the things that we've said to each other, and she usually says it to me, but it's like, where are you at, and how did you get there? And so that's been such a cool thing. So as opposed to just saying, for me, like, where are you at? Or like, oh, I'm frustrated. Oh, I'm angry. Well, how did you get there? And then what we realize is, like, when we retrace it back to all the steps, or what I'm, feeling in the moment, she can be so much more compassionate, and I can be more compassionate for her. And then she's able to point out, like, no, that's not what I meant when you said that. No. You actually misunderstood me there. This is what my intention was. And I'm sorry if it came out this way or you received it in this way. And we can walk it back. And actually, through developing repetitions of that, we've gotten so much better to where, I mean, we still definitely are on the same, or on the opposite page sometimes, especially her having a baby right now and going through so many changes and stuff like that. Like, I'm so into supporting us financially and doing all that stuff that there is times where I'm just oblivious to things, for sure. And so she'll need to say, like, where are you at? And how did you get there? And I'll walk her through, and then that provides a whole new opportunity to grow.
I love that. I actually stopped and took a note. That's a good one, because it's just 2 questions. Sometimes in relationships we can end up in this processing. It's like, oh, how are you feeling? And then, how's it? And we start talking about that moment. But I think it's good for the partner to ask for that, because sometimes I'm not conscious of how I got to where I'm at. I'm like, oh, I'm fucking frustrated, and well, if and a lot of times through the conversation, I finally get to the point where I'm like, well, this is how I got here. But that's a much more direct question. It's like, well, how did you get there? It's like, well, I need to actually stop and think about how I got to where I'm at too. And this isn't, I'm feeling frustrated now, but it's been 3 weeks of this, and this, and this. That's how I got here. Okay. it piled up.
That's so spot on, and not to add more to that, but to add more to that.
Add more.
The other thing that's been helpful too, and this also relates to some of the men's work too, is whether it's a question asked or just something that now we've fallen into a rhythm of doing. It's like it's either a question spoken or just the energies around it. Is there anything left unsaid? Is there anything left, or was there anything that you were like needing to hear that wasn't said? But I think that provides a closure to it, because a lot of times you're exactly right. We can get lost in this thing, but it's a very simple thing. Where are you at? How did you get there? And then at the end of the conversation, if it doesn't feel complete, just check in. Like, was there anything left unsaid that you want to share right now? So we can, essentially, so we can button this shit up and actually move on, as opposed to leaving the container or leaving the discussion and then harboring it. And then maybe it was a small thing, then it builds and it builds, and then there's resentment. It's like, no, if there's something left to say, let's say it now. Let's move on from there.
I like that a lot. We check in and say, hey, are you complete? Do you feel complete around this? I like that question better. What you just said. What's left unsaid? It's like, okay, it's a small thing, but that's the small thing that's got its foot in the door. That's gonna, rear its ugly head in 2 days because it just festers.
Well, that was something that we did some coaching with. He was the first guest on my podcast. Super amazing person, Yakov Darling Khan. He's a shaman from the UK. Super grounded cat, very wise. And he did right before, I think it was it was right after I had asked Lauren to marry me. We asked him to do like a ceremony for us, a drumming ceremony, and like basically coach us through things. And one of the things he took us through in that coaching session, which was so powerful, and actually like sharing this now like makes me want to rewatch that call. He basically had us share with each other and then witness with him like what marriage is to us and what it means to us and how we're going to show up. So basically, I guess like even sharing our vows. But then at the end of that, he had said, what's left unsaid? And then he piggybacked that afterwards or in that moment with, Lauren, what were you longing for Mike to say that you didn't hear? And what she had shared with me blew me away. And I'm happy to share this little piece from it. And for me, what she had shared was something that, if I can, I'll paraphrase, that she sees how committed I am to serving and to doing the men's work, and she sees that level of commitment, and she's just like, she needs to know that I'll bring that same level of commitment to our relationship. If that is the truth, then she can feel at ease. But she needs to know, like, the way I go all in on that, she wants to make sure it's at home. And like, to me, that was such a, not a check, but it was such an awakening. Like, holy shit. Like, even now, like, my heart and just like, I feel just tingling through my body, because I'm like, I do strive for that. And now it's constantly in my mind, like, how am I showing up for her and our family? How are we being team? Like, am I thinking of just myself, or am I thinking of the team? Because it's true. Like, I love what I do, and I love serving, and I love creating these containers, and my family's my family. And now my family is like, basically like my family, my health, and my service are my top 3 values. Yeah. And I don't think I could have said that, or at least said that with as much conviction from my heart, until that moment when Yakov posed the question to us, what were you longing to hear that wasn't said?
Yeah. Yeah. And I forgot where I was going. Oh, the one of the frames that I've I don't know if it's something I observed or something someone shared with me at some point, but I've always recognized men tend to be much more outside focused, much more mission oriented. So the masculine is the ultimate masculine is a single point, right? It's the tip of the spear, the tip of the pyramid, and the feminine is an open space. And I mean, it even shows up biologically with women. They have more left, right brain hemisphere connections than men. So we biologically are hardwired. For us, we think about fewer things, but in a much more intense way. and they can absorb more of what's happening in the entire environment, the energy of that person over there. You have a party, you have a dozen people over. She's dialed into the comfort of every person in the home, in which way, like, most dudes would never fucking have a clue, right? I'm not tracking that. I'm focused on, I need to make a bag for my friends. Like, I'm on mission mode, So I think that there's something to consider in that. And I think that is one of the challenges in relationships is men tend to be much more single pointed. And this isn't always the case. Some men are more feminine, and I know I have more left right brain hemisphere connections than I did a decade ago. So I definitely, come to the middle a little bit. I'm sure biologically, if we were looking at my brain, it's adjusted as well. And it's interesting because I think that is like the thing that causes some friction, because the woman wants as much attention on the relationship from the guy, but his attention typically is on the mission, and then like the community comes second. I think that's what I've witnessed. I don't know how, some people might hear that and go, I don't know about that, but yeah.
Well, I think too, to that point, just to piggyback, like I think the masculine is much more orientated towards the sense of freedom, and the female is oriented towards the sense of connection. Not that you can't have both, and not that some people have more of a masculine essence compared to a feminine essence, but if you resonate with having a strong masculine essence, oftentimes there's the propensity towards freedom. And that's something that I've really felt.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had that same experience. It's kind of a rhetorical question, knowing you. Even getting Mike to sit still in a medicine ceremony is a task. No, myself included. I'm speaking because this is me as well. Mike and Mike.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things I've thought more about recently is, there's this really great values calculator I like to use online. It's offered by Dr. Demartini. And actually, anyone who goes through any of my courses will do this. Usually they complete this in the first week. So it tells you that you basically fill out like all these different questions, and you can see where it's going as you fill it out. But then it spits out a report of your values. But not only that, your hierarchy of values. And, what do you value the most? What's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? And then I read this book, Wanting, which is fucking one of the best books I read this year. Wanting, and it was talking about how people don't know how to take right action because they're confused about the hierarchy. Like, oh, I value these two things. Which one is higher? And I think that's a lot of times when people experience regret is when they do value two things, but they go with the thing that was of actually lesser value because they never sat down and consciously said, what are the hierarchy of values? Which value do I have the most? And thinking about, we may both have freedom as a number one, and then connection might be number two. And but here's the thing: values change, and that change in values where I go, okay, I need to put family before work. Okay, that's an adjustment, and I think that's a thing that I've gotten to in the courses with people too. Is I think that there's this expectation that your values shouldn't change. Like, oh, my value, that's who I am. Like, I was like, well, I'm 41 now. I've witnessed my values evolve quite a bit. I've got someone ringing the doorbell twice. Let me get this.
Go do it.
So we have how have your values shifted? Or are they shifting right now? And is that what's that process like?
Oh, dude, when you were sharing that, I was like, yeah, absolutely. My values have changed. And just even everything is everything. Not, I don't want to say everything's getting thrown out the window, for example, but so many things are changing. And the biggest thing is like, especially as we hit different I think like as we bring in different identities, each time we bring in a new identity or we're shifting, there's going to need to be a set of values that are associated with that. Like if someone wanted to, I don't know, lose 50 pounds or be healthier, their value systems and their hierarchy of values is going to need to shift. Because if food was value number 6, as opposed to going out and partying, that would not be in alignment with that new identity. And I think fatherhood and marriage, like these are massive shifts within me. Like the biggest thing one of the biggest things that I feel like has a trickle down effect to everything else, no matter what value it is, it's bringing it back to team. So it's like whether it's, I shared earlier, like my health, service, and family, like 3 big values for me, right? Well, even though service is number 3, service is huge, but I'm still always considering it through the lens of how does this impact my family? And, am I able to be home at, let's say, stop working at 6:30 p.m. so I can be with the family? So I'm always bringing it back to team. I'm always bringing it back to family. And so right now, like my values have been so much more orientated around things that never, it could have been maybe even similar values, but like what you said to your point, the order even has shifted. And that feels so different. Like never before in my life have I, and I've heard this before, and it's already happening, and I can't even imagine when our Luca comes into this world, that what's the saying that I've heard so many times by people I respect and dads, that like you like don't know how much you love something, like you don't realize that you love someone more than yourself until you have a child, and wanting to protect that child and that baby. And so I'm already feeling that. And so everything that's going through my mind, like before when I was traveling or working, for example, like, I'd maybe not necessarily put more space in the travel, but now I want to get back home ASAP.
Yeah.
Like I was literally thinking today, I was like, I want to be here and I'm having a great time here and I know why I'm here. But literally the thought went to my head. I was like, I wonder if I could get a flight back today. Like, I wonder like what time I would get back at home and if I'd be able to have dinner with Lauren and get to place my hand on Lauren's belly. And like those things would never have come through my mind before. And so even if they're the similar values, as I'm shifting in identities, whether it's things that I've chosen or things just in life that are happening, my hierarchy has changed. And I think that's so important. And I love how you said like our hierarchies or our values will change over life as we change. And funny thing is, but people, at least in my experience, can be pretty intense around values. Like I actually was on a discovery or sales call.
They're like tied to identity, and those things are well fortified.
Oh, dude, it was the most challenging sales call I'd ever had from the respect of, or discovery call from the respect of the guy who was coming, seemingly good dude. But I've never been like interrogated, like legit interrogated on a call.
Yeah.
He set up the call because interested in the retreat. But he was like, and I would just, start off the conversation. Just, this is casual. Where are you at in your life? What's coming up? Like, what are you struggling with? Or, what are you excited about? Like, just, share. Before I share anything, like, I need to know your core values. I need to know your values before I even remotely will open up and share. I'm like, whoa, dude. Like, and it got to the point like where I shared.
You need the retreat.
Yeah, you need the retreat. And I shared my values. And I was just like, this is so weird. But I ended up telling him and just in a respectful but in a stern way, I was like, look, brother, I've got nothing to prove to you, and you've got nothing to prove to me. And in fact, what we do at the retreat is exactly trying to like deprogram that same bullshit that we have to show up and pretend like we got to be someone to be accepted. Like you just show up as you, and that's all you got to do.
Yeah.
And then just join the group and participate as much as you want to. But it was so interesting because I've never been like legit interrogated. What's your core values? I was like, dude, you need to loosen the fuck up, bro. That's what I'm thinking in my head.
Coming from a guy who knows his values.
Yes.
I can tell you, but like, this is not a useful conversation.
Yeah.
And it's funny because for a long time, I was like, okay, I've got I have what I want to accomplish. And then it's like, oh, I set my vision and then I set my values. And then now my values dictate how my vision is conducted. But and I think part of that is true. There's certain values that you can say, okay, well, I'm gonna achieve this, but I'm not gonna do it by doing these things. But yeah, this whole thing of like solidifying your values in stone as you try to hit a vision that's uh, contradictory. It's like, well, if you achieve this vision, you won't get there with these values. Like if you have this vision of living this great life, but you value drinking beer 3-4 nights a week, these are contradictory. Like you're not like you could try to have both, but that's gonna be the hard way.
Yeah, that's so true. And it'd be actually really, I would like. I've never been through that DeMartini exercise. I'd love to go through it. And actually, is it a free resource? Or
Yeah, if you just Google Dr. DeMartini values,
yeah,
I think it's one of the first things on his website. Even if you don't search for values, it's free. I mean, you're going to end up getting emailed, but it's kind of their lead magnet.
sure.
So, but he's got great information. Not necessarily like he's a coach. He's a performance, like a personal development coach. And not really my style, but he has some good stuff.
Some good resources. Well, I think it'd be really cool. Like, I'd like to take it now, and there's already been shifted because I've done different exercises in the past. I'd be curious to see something that can spit out a report and just the consistency of it, and then check myself in a year. And I'd be really curious to see how things, shift and how things change with, then Luca coming into the world.
So what's the business plan with a child coming in?
The business plan, simplify. That's like the big thing, as opposed to having 10 offers. Like, I love what I do and I get super jazzed and excited, and I realize that having so many different offers, each one takes time, energy, follow up, let alone the time to run it, but all the stuff on the back end that takes so much time. And what I realized just with the baby coming and having that family and that team as the big rudder on the ship, I was like, this is just not the way I want to live. Like, no way. And so really it's going to be simplifying things down to 3 main things. I'll still do as come up, like a few special stuff, but it's to continue to automate and optimize the kettlebell online programs. That's already done. That's just continually getting better at optimizing and selling. Then the men's work, which is actually its own product line and developing more and more. So we have 2 retreats a year, doing more executive or high level one-on-one coaching. I might do some group coaching cohorts that I can do virtually around that. But the men's work line, and then the podcast, which I've been one of the reasons why, I'm hustling so much, is to bank as many episodes as possible. So when the babe comes, then basically it's just going to be promotion and that will feed into everything else. So one of the things, I actually had multiple sessions with Pam, the lady who the wizard, or the witch wizard, and she's told me multiple times in one of the readings that like I can do many things. Like, I'm someone who needs many things to keep me, like, if I do one thing, I'll go fucking crazy. Like, my sense of freedom will be,
yeah, I get that.
yeah, like I need to do a lot of things to keep me thinking and excited and engaged. But she's always told me 3 plates. You can do 3 plates. You can have 3 plates spinning, but no more than that. And so I just got really clear time and time again, what are the 3 plates that I want to roll that won't necessarily depend on so much travel, that I can do from home, that will filter and feed into everything else, and that are truly aligned with where I feel I want to go. And the podcast, I wasn't able to say it until you said it. Now it's just like, oh, fuck, I get it. Like, my commitment to personal growth and my excitement to continually understanding myself and growing myself, what you said about the podcast being potentially the single biggest thing for your personal growth, I was like, that's it. That's a big part of what will keep me excited and continuing to do it for the long term. So, and then the men's work is just where all my heart is right now. And I can incorporate as much movement as I want within that to support the goals of the person or the group. So those are my 3 plates. And then there'll be some specialty, like little, special side things along the way. But I can do that at home. I can be Papa. And for the first at least few months, I'm just going to be home and being with the baby and Lauren.
No. Tell me more about the podcast.
So the podcast is called The Path. And just like what we've talked about up to this point, like movement obviously has been a huge part of my journey, but that's not necessarily where I wanted the podcast to go. Like I'm way more interested in, let's just say, the hero's journey or the life experience. And of course, if we can share some things that are like very tangible that people can learn. But even like I had, Mike Ruscio on last night, and it was around just male optimization for the most part. And he definitely shared some very solid recommendations and some science stuff. And I was also equally as curious about him as a man and what he's gone through and his relationships and what's he still scared of today and where he's working through stuff. Because I really feel like love, connection, play, family, like those are the things, at least for me. And again, it's a reflection of what I'm most interested in, that I really feel are the things that are making my life worth living and really elevating me. Taking another fitness course or movement course would be fun, but not even remotely excites me and energizes me as opposed to, just doing even if it was an art workshop with Lauren, like doing a mandala workshop at Chex with Lauren, we did that last year, was one of the best things that we did all year. And it was literally, Paul wasn't even speaking much until day 2 when he interpreted the artwork, but it was literally day 1 like ceremony. We're in there, we're painting, there's good music, taking a little puffs of some pot, from time to time, or having a little edible. And we just dropped in and it was so awesome. So the podcast is talking more about that. What are the struggles that people has faced? And also when this is something that I'm super interested in is oftentimes when we see people that we deem as successful, whether it's in the business world, personal development, whatever. And I make I fall into this trap too. We tend to see people that are successful or that we want to admire or model. And oftentimes we tend to think, and also we don't know their story, that they either got there easily or we don't really realize the struggles that they went through. And with that, the people that we admire the most, what excites me the most and interests me the most is when shit did hit the fan and they themselves were put in a situation where they were faced with, I don't know what the fuck to do. How did they navigate it when they didn't have everything put together, when they didn't have the business systems together that they do now, or what? How did they develop the inner resource and maybe fuck up or learn a lesson? So especially with the people that we admire, and I think that brings things down to a humanness aspect. And while I do feel it's important to have models and role models and take inspiration from many people, this brings things down. The pedestaling is brought down.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh shit, okay, he's a human too. And, that also creates more maybe opportunity or possibility for me, with me. And doesn't feel so separate. Now I can actually connect with the humanness of that person and take the actual gems as opposed to the illusions of what we've made this person to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I got a message when I was living in SoCal from a guy that was like, easy for you to say, you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth in SoCal. I'm like, I'm not even from SoCal.
First off,
I'm from Tennessee. And no silver spoons. I can guarantee you that. But I mean, the person was watching me on social media and YouTube, and it looked like success. I mean, it was success in a lot of ways. But yeah, his impression of like where I came from was feeding into his victim mentality, right? And so
wow.
he was like, I can't do what you say because you didn't struggle like I'm struggling, right? That's someone who's in pain. And it's easy just to tell someone to stop having their victim mentality. But when you're in it, someone telling you that isn't going to help at all. But if you can, like you said, lower that pedestal, I think that kind of, that basically lowers the barrier of entry and go, okay, I can kind of put away, my victimness is not as, I'm not as much of a victim as I thought I was. Especially when you get someone who's like I lived in my gym because I couldn't afford an apartment at one point. It's like, I was broke, So it's good for people to hear that. It's good for people. What was the tough thing for you? Like, what about when were you like just really struggling? Because people, I mean, meeting you, since I met you, it seemed like you always had it together, right? Well, well, when we worked together a bit, I was like, oh, the business could use some work, but you pretty much had it together. But I'm sure there was a time where it was just all struggle.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that sticks out is, I've been doing, fitness teaching or movement teaching for I don't even know how long now, since I was 18, so almost 18 years. But that being said, when I was in my family business for 8 years in marble and granite, and that was my full, like,
You were doing both.
I was doing both.
Yeah.
And, working, 5 to 7 days a week for the family. And there's nothing wrong with that business, but doing marble and granite sales and marketing and being in front of a computer in the back of an office when, like, all I want to do is teach and share and study and stuff like that, it felt to many parts of me very soul sucking. And, I love my family, and that's always been super important to me. And it definitely funded my ability to do some amazing things, work with Paul Check and, take any course that I want. So there's been a lot of beauty around it. And in that moment, like, it was such a hard thing for me to like grow out of, because loyalty and family is always been so important to me. And so what it felt like is, and how I experienced it is, by me following my dream, I'm leaving my family, or I'm letting them down. I'm letting my brother down, my mom down. I'm and after that, it was really, really, really challenging, because I was separating myself. I mean, oftentimes I basically lived with my brother, and before that, we lived with our folks. We saw them all day. So oftentimes I'd eat breakfast at the office, breakfast, lunch, dinner at the office, and then work later. I would train with my brother. That always came first. And so for me, it was like you were taking a big, like, as much as I was filling myself with the passion and getting to do me, you take out like my family from that, or at least being in such close proximity, you take out a big part of my heart. And it took a long time. It took years to reconcile that and to develop, trust again within the family, and in both directions. And so for me, I just remember many times in the office just going to tears. Like, it was almost like I didn't have the courage, or I wasn't ready to take that step because of what I thought it would mean, and in many respects, what it did mean to my family. So that was probably one of the most challenging things and checks for me to actually get clear on what I really want. And I remember when I made that pivot, I always told myself, if I do this, if I fucking do this and have the courage to do it, I'm going all in. And not only am I going all in, I will never take for granted the ability to do what I love and to share. And that's just set me, on a trajectory to where, like, I'm very grateful for the work that I get to do. Take aside, maybe quote unquote being successful or whatever, just the ability to do what I fucking love each day and not be in a cubicle. And I do work a lot from the computer, but I'm working on the things that really bring me joy. There's no price to that. And I knew in that moment, if that continued, because I was 8 years in, if that continued, I would have gotten sick. Like, I just knew it. Like, I could feel it. Like, I could just feel it so much. And there was only so much that my discipline and my keep showing up for a value that's just not in alignment with where I want to go in the direction. So that was not only a really hard moment, that was a really hard 8 years being there and then making the transition. So it tested me and it showed me a lot, and it's really provided, I think it also, now even reflecting as I'm processing, it definitely gave me some reps into stepping into the confidence to step into the new identity and do more of the men's work, because I had already felt like I was willing to lose everything almost, so to speak, to do what I love. And so if I knew that sharing with men and creating these containers was going to bring me a higher level of fulfillment and I could show up in more service, then it was almost like, might not have been easy, but the question's already answered.
Yeah.
So what are you waiting for?
Yeah. What did you experience any like financial hardship? Like, okay, I'm gonna leave the family business, which is very established, and you're responsible for your part, but you're not responsible for the whole thing. Going to that, going, okay, I've got the full responsibility of this myself. And I imagine you weren't treating it as a full-time job. So like things weren't structured in a way to support you. Would that be accurate?
Very accurate. Super accurate. Like I remember a buddy of mine from middle school, Chris, was living in San Diego, and part of me needed to fully separate from the family in distance, because being in such like the same environment, like just like with anything, if I don't even know, like if you're an addict on something, it's very hard to be around other addicts when you're trying to make shifts. And so when you're trying to step into new identity, like I really felt like I needed to create actual physical space. So I basically moved down to
family's definitely going to pull you into like childhood identity.
Oh my gosh! Like what do they say? Like let's see how spiritual you are until we see you at like Thanksgiving dinner or something like that.
Yeah.
But I remember my boy Chris. Like I was sleeping basically on his floor.
Yeah.
No, actually, I don't think I've ever shared that with anybody. But there was a few months almost that I was sleeping on his floor. And what the wild thing was and it was super stressful financially. The wild thing is I remember going to sleep on the ground with just like a little pad. And I just remember so many nights just fucking smiling ear to ear. Like just being like, I'll take this. Like, I'll take this, like, no problem. And so it was challenging, but like my spirit in many ways was the thing that was carrying me through that.
Yeah.
But yeah, food, sleeping situation, all of that stuff. Like I definitely had that challenging experience.
Yeah. I think I like you talking about that, because I think that's the one thing that people are able to point at, that it's kind of like it's the scapegoat. Oh, I'll lose my health insurance, or I'll lose that consistent salary in order to really pursue my dreams. And so many people, that's such a valid excuse for so many people. Like that, I think that's the primary excuse for people to really live out their dreams. And so if I go, oh, I just, the money, and then everyone else has that same problem, so no one's going to challenge me on it, right? And like I've been one of those people that challenge people on it. I'm like, yeah, it's just money, like. And they're like, no, but really, like, it's my, my life. I'm like, yeah. I mean, I don't see anyone starving to death in America. Like, could you move in with your mom? Like, well, yeah, but that would be. I'm like, okay, but maybe it'd just be for a short period of time. That's also okay. You're not gonna fucking die. I promise. And there's health share plans out there that are $200 a month, by the way, folks, that are better than insurance, in my opinion. So. ZionHealth.com. I don't get any money for that. But yeah, there's this idea that, if like all this, I think part of it is people feel like they need to be, I think you're like the ideal person to even put in this category, because most people go from their parents to their teachers to college, university, to a boss. And so that parental energy keeps getting transferred. And so if the idea that I'm going to now have to be the adult, because if you have a job, you're actually the child to your supervisor, your boss, right? You have a boss. They tell you when to be, where to be, right? Like, dude, yeah, be at the office this time or you're fired. Like it's kind of strange when you think about it. You go, oh, there's a ton of people out there that have never known anything other than being told when and where to be and how to do whatever it is they're doing. They're just being told what they haven't developed their mind in a way where they grow out of that. And so that's a huge shift. But for you, like you actually never even needed to transfer that energy outside of your parents, because they were right there the whole time. So I could see that being even more challenging.
Oh, dude. And that was really that was when I was 30. That for me was like symbolically when I really, like looking back, that's when I individuated. Took me 30 years, but that's when I really individuated into like being courageous enough to get clear on what I want and following through it, irregardless of the consequences and the repercussions. Because the truth is, it's like what you were saying with the person who, whatever, doesn't want to lose the money or moving with their mom. Like, there's going to be consequences. Like,
Totally.
like that's, I think, something really to be realistic about. And also, I think it'd be a really helpful exercise. And I've done this too, and it's brought me to tears, which means like I know that I'm actually fully feeling into it. It's just like writing out whatever the decision or whatever it is, the shit that's challenging you. Okay, make a list on either side. What is the pros? What is the cons? Or what is the benefits? And then what are the consequences of this action? Write that list. And more than writing the list, feeling into each thing. So I felt into, if I leave, I may not have anything. Okay, that really sucks. Everything's going to need to change.
Yeah.
But I don't think it'll be permanent. Can I be okay with that? And I went through each thing on that list, and I was like, and a lot of it brought me to tears. And I was like, it was my way of starting the process almost of like grieving. And it took me a process to grieve parts of that identity and those relationships in that way, because now the family dynamic has shifted. And I would say is, even though I spend exponentially less actual time with the family, I feel more connected to them than I ever have. Because when they see me and when I see them, yes, there's still old triggers. Yeah, there's still all that shit. But I feel like now more than ever, they get to see me for me. And parts that I was afraid to show before because, of the loyalty, etc. Like, now I feel way more individuated, and they get to experience that version of Mike.
Yeah. Yeah. What about, tell me about your retreats. Oh, we talked a little bit about it, but yeah, what's coming up? I mean, I know you're going to have there's a baby on the way in the next 2 months, so I imagine there's nothing happening in the next few months, but yeah. And are you doing men's work outside of retreats? Is there other coaching and online programs? Yeah.
Yeah. So when you were saying that, I was like, Lord, get ready to get back in the kitchen. She'll probably slap me silly for doing that, because she's much more than just a cook. Nothing wrong with cooks, but yeah. So there will be more, and the food is, and I bring that up because the food is such a big part of it, and bringing people back to their connection with food. And we offer food like from the hunts that I've gone on and stuff like that, and we bring in prayer, and so it's beautiful, man. And these retreats, they're called Men of Movement. Not surprisingly, because movement has, there's the physical movement, but as you know super well, it's movement. Like, everything is movement, and oftentimes, as Yakov would say, like, what's the difference between a live person and a dead person? It's movement. And so really these retreats have been an incredible way. They're out in Mount Shasta. We've been using the same location on an organic farm out there. And Mount Shasta is the root chakra point of the world. And so what I really wanted to do, there is no like psychedelic medicines per se involved in the retreats. There's a little tobacco, a little bit of cacao. But that being said, like, I really wanted to give people, especially have it be people who are coming into this space of doing some deeper healing work or personal growth work, etc. And I really wanted to give them the experience of developing the tools that they could take for the rest of their life. And if and when they choose, potentially, if they do, to go into some plant medicine work, they will have the tools to know how to navigate and to sit with it more when shit comes up, and to understand their flight, fight, freeze, facade patterns and how that shows up in different relationships, and engage in breath work. And we do a sweat lodge. And so it's one ritual after the next, and everything builds upon the last thing. And I would say the overall theme is like to give men in community of other men the felt experience of what it is to be like the center of the storm, or be the buffalo that goes directly into the head of the storm, as opposed to making excuses or running away. And every activity will challenge the guys on a different level. Sometimes the sweat lodge and the heat may be the thing that not breaks them, but pushes them to that level where they don't know that they can do it, and they're tested their edges, and they realize that the brother next to them is not going to let them go out. And I've had a guy wanting to step out, and then Nico, I remember, like put his hand. He's like, no, you're okay. And the guy looked at Nico, and he knew that he was okay, and he stayed in, and he was so happy that he did. And so each experience, whether it's sound expression or, the breath work, every experience is meant to push a different edge and push a different button, but you're doing so amongst almost 20 guys that are all in the same boat. And one of the things that's blown me away, and I don't know if it's because we're doing more of this work or maybe the word's getting out that this is more the containers that we're holding, but and it's so true to our point earlier, like you really never know what the fuck someone's gone through. And I am blown away, and that is no exaggeration, the openness and the willingness to share what's happened. And there's been, sadly some horrific stuff that's happened to people. But when they show up and share, like the medicine is that them sharing, them opening up. Yes, like the breath work is a tool and it can help you, for example. But for me, each of the men is that medicine. And so these right now, especially with the baby, the next one will be in June. So it gives me a little bit of time, and Lauren will be guiding another chef through the menu and stuff like that. But in between that, I really am now I'm figuring out, do I want to do, and I'll know this very soon in the next week or so, stuff to do in between. So whether it's like a half day virtual workshop type thing, where we can grow the container, or a 1 day in person. So I imagine I'll be doing that. And then I'm very excited. I don't know if it'll be ready by the retreat, but I imagine that's the game plan, is I'll have some type of like 6 to 8 week cohort. So doing some more stuff online that I can do from home with the baby there. And then right now I'm taking on a very small amount of one-on-one clients. So I really want to develop this product line. And now that the podcast is running and I've like learned more or less the logistics around everything that needs to happen there, the kettlebell stuff is cruising, is not on cruise control, but it's just promoting and business stuff. Now I get to really play, and I get to really step into what does this product line, from bringing someone in at a very low level of commitment, whether it's financial or just easing their way into it, to ultimate leading to a retreat later down the road, and or working one-on-one if they want more focused support. So that's where like I'm so excited to continue putting energy in.
Yeah. So you're in a position where you built a business to where it supports you, to where you can be in that creative energy. And I think that's where a lot of people who start their own business, they have this dream, like, oh, I'm going to do that thing. But then all the things that you have to do to get to that point it's a lot. Yeah. It's a lot, it's not the easiest way. There's so much you have to learn. But I mean, what else are you going to do in this lifetime, right? So what was the period of time between, okay, I'm going to go off on my own from working with my family, to okay, my business is making enough money and I feel stable enough to pursue the thing I'm passionate about?
I don't know if it was ever, as I'm reflecting now, if it was ever like such a clear thing for that, but that had to have been true. But I think, so to answer your question in a short way first, I would say probably a solid 3 to 3.5 years, maybe even more. Like I'm super proud of where I've come, but I'm still, especially now, having a family and supporting Lauren and our family, like I'm stoked to say, like I've probably, the last 2 months and next month are looking like the best months I've ever had. And as quickly as money's coming in, money's going out, for the family stuff and planning and all sorts of stuff. So that being said, I'm still very much building, but, a solid 3.5, even up to 5 years now, I would say, the ability to do some of this stuff. But one of the things, and I think this is for me, especially for men, but almost all people, like I feel it's so important to do hard shit. Like I feel like the taking the courage to depart from the family business, to step out of just the identity of a fitness trainer, and you supported me a ton in this. And I remember when we were doing coaching together in the mastermind, I couldn't, and I actually just shared this with a group the other night. I was giving a presentation. I could not call myself a businessman without feeling a level of pretty severe inauthenticity or imposter syndrome, let alone my affirmation was, I'm a world-class businessman. Literally saying that back then, I wanted to puke,
Yeah.
And so, but doing those hard things, And even just like I remember before COVID, I was grinding so much, traveling 6 to 9 months, teaching, like I'm doing 3 podcasts today. And like that is a lot. Like that's an upper threshold.
Totally.
However, like it's so different than being in fucking New York City, traveling on a subway with 4 Bulgarian bags, literally walking from gym to gym and doing 5 appointments in a day and teaching 5 groups of trainers where it's like I'm physically exhausted mentally. And so not to downplay the challenges that are associated with this, but it's like when my dad started, he was laying tile, marble, and granite. He was laying floors for 18 years. And I've seen him work his ass off in his current job, but he's like, to be honest, this is hard, but it's not shit compared to being outside in Florida weather with no knee pads back then, on his hands and knees for 12, 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. So pushing ourselves and having that relative experience and being willing, like maybe with the family now, there's more to lose, and they're like I feel that more. And when it was just me, it was a little bit different. But I just know I've got enough confidence and enough repetitions and trusting myself that I know that I'm going to be okay. And I'm more excited now than I've ever been. So I've got that going for me, and I've got the support of Lauren, and like, so let's just fucking go. That's the big feeling right now.
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. Where can people find you?
So Instagram is mike.salemi. My website is mikesalemi.io. If anybody's interested in the Men of Movement retreat, there's a drop down there. You'll hop on a call with me. And then that's got all the kettlebell programs and everything. So if anyone's got any questions or just wants to hear more about the retreat or any other thing that we talked about, would love to chat. So you can just find me there.
Cool. And when I post the show, I'll post the links in the email that I send out. So you don't have to write all that shit down. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate
Thank you.
it. Love you,
much,
brother.
Love you too, man. Thank you.